Hi, I'm Nancy Rathbun. Thank you for purchasing our Festive Tulips Block of the Month. This month we're on Block 13. I needed to make a little correction and talk about blocks 10, 11, 12, and 13. None of those have the star points. So those are going to be the corner blocks for the quilt, and you don't have to sew the star points on them. Hi, I'm Nancy Rathbun from Completely Quilted. Thank you for purchasing our Festive Tulips Block of the Month. You're on your last block, which is block number 13, so I'll demonstrate how that is sewn together. So in block 13, we have a lot of elements that we've already done in our blocks. You're going to start by making your square in a square center block, and this is going to have a tulip section sewn on either side. You're also going to be making half square triangle blocks just like we've made in the past. These are going to be sewn on the corners of your top and your bottom row for this center block. So I'll go ahead and sew this center together so you can see how this is sewn. So there's my center unit with the rectangles of the tiny tulips sewn on each side. And then I've got my top and bottom sections with those half square triangles. So I'm going to sew one to the top and the bottom, and my center will be complete. So there's my center block. Now I'm ready to complete the elements to create the rest of the block. So much like we've done in other blocks, you're going to have 3 squares that are the same size, and you're going to be cutting these on the diagonal in an X so that you can sew these little triangles back together. So we're going to follow the diagram. And I just like to stack up all of my little fabrics triangles the way they're going to get sewn together. That way I'm not getting confused what gets sewn where. So it's almost going to be like a little butterfly block again. We're going to have these dark purples on either side, the background on the top, and the tiny tulips on the bottom. So when we sew these together, I'm going to sew these 2 triangles together and these 2, creating that square. I'll line these up and sew from this angle all the way down. So I'm going to finger press these seams towards the dark. So I have my section sewn together like this. They're both pressed towards the dark. Now I'm going to sew these units together to create a square. There's my little square block here, and you can see that these points nest really nicely. They're all on the bias edge, so you need to be careful when you're pressing these that you're not stretching or skewing those. You're going to have 4 of these sections. You're also going to create some of those little half flying geese blocks. So you only have 1 diagonal seam. Now notice that these 2 sections are opposite each other. So 4 of each angle. I'm going to set those aside and we'll be creating our blocks with these units. So I have my little butterfly unit sewn together. Now one of these diagonal sections is going to get sewn on either side. So you're going to have an opposite one on each side. And you're going to sew 4 of these together to create this block. Now the center block is going to have 1 of these on each side. Okay, I'm going to sew this together so you can see how that's completed. You are going to have 4 sections that look like this. And I will sew one to each side of our center block. So here's your center section with each one of those star points sewn to each side. So in this step, in this block is the only block that we get to sew a strip set. So we have these tiny little 1-inch strips that we've sewn together here. And now we're going to subcut this into 1-inch segments. So I'm going to take my rotary cutter and my little 1-inch ruler, and I'm going to cut this into little 1-inch pieces. You're going to need 8 of these little segments, And what we'll do is we'll sew little 4-patch units together. So we'll take 2 of these segments, nest those seams. I just finger pressed this seam towards that green. And here is your tiny little 4-patch. I'm going to keep cutting these and stitching, and I should have 4 of those tiny little 4-patch units. So those 4-patch units are going to be sewn to create another 4-patch. So you'll have a 4-patch here in the corner with my greens going diagonal, and then I'm going to have a green number 2 and 2 background squares. So the background squares will be opposite of each other, and then my greens lined up with my light green. So this is going to create another 4-patch. So I'll finish sewing these and show you what that looks like. So here's my tiny 4-patch within a 4-patch block. You may have heard me say that I would never sew something this small together, but I've had a lot of fun sewing these little pieces. So let's finish this block. So we have our center square with our star points sewn on each end. This is going to be the center strip in our block. And then we have the top and bottom rows. That's going to have another star strip with those tiny 4-patch within a 4-patches. And they're going to be sewn on the top and the bottom of my center unit here. I'll sew this together and then we'll have a completed block. Thank you for watching our demonstration of block 13. This was your last block, so the next video you're going to be watching will be the finishing instructions for your quilt top.